This is the story of something that happened to me 5 years ago. I haven't told many people because honestly, most wouldn't believe it. But tonight I feel like I need to share it. Maybe it'll help me sleep better. It all started during a long road trip across the country. I had just broken up with my girlfriend, lost my job, and needed to get away from everything. So I packed my things, got in my car, and just drove. No map, no plan, just the open road. After 2 days of driving through hills, forests, and small towns, I ended up somewhere in the southwest desert. The sun was setting, and I was running low on gas. That's when I saw a sign. Welcome to Grey Hill. It looked like a regular desert town. Dusty streets, old buildings, a gas station, and a diner. But there was something strange. No people. Not a single soul. At first, I thought it was just a quiet town, or maybe everyone was inside. I pulled into the gas station, but it was empty. The door was open, but no one was there. I walked behind the counter, found a note on the register. It said, "Take what you need. Just don't stay past dark." I should have left right then. Something about that note gave me chills, but I was tired, and I needed gas and maybe a quick meal. So I filled up my tank, then went to the diner across the street. Same thing. Door open, lights flickering, but not a soul inside. Hot coffee was still in the pot. A half-eaten sandwich on one of the tables, like everyone had just stood up and left all at once. I started to feel uneasy, like I was being watched. But there was no one. No sound. Not even birds or wind. Just silence. I sat down to drink some coffee, trying to shake the strange feeling. That's when I saw movement through the diner window. A figure. It passed quickly between two buildings. I stood up fast, my heart pounding. I rushed outside, but no one was there. I decided it was time to leave. I ran to my car, jumped in, turned the key, and nothing. The engine clicked but wouldn't start. I tried again. Same thing. I checked the battery. Everything looked fine. That's when I saw something in my rearview mirror. A shadow. Standing in the middle of the street. Not moving. Just watching. Me. I spun around, but again, no one was there. Okay. I wasn't going to mess around anymore. I grabbed my backpack, left the car, and started walking back toward the highway. But here's the thing. I never found the road again. I swear I had just driven in from that direction. It was a straight path. But now, the road was gone. It just stopped behind the last building, like it had never existed. Instead, there was just desert. Empty, endless, silent desert. Now I was really freaking out. I pulled out my phone. No signal. Of course. I tried using the compass app to figure out which way to walk, but the needle kept spinning in circles. That's when the sun dropped below the horizon, and everything changed. Suddenly, it wasn't just silent. It was dead. The colors of the town faded, like someone turned the world to black and gray. The buildings looked older now, more broken. Windows cracked, rust on every surface. The air was colder too. I could see my breath, and then I heard it. Footsteps. Not just one pair, many. Coming from every direction. I ducked behind a car, heart pounding. I saw them then. Figures moving down the street. Pale. Thin. Faces blank like stretched skin. Their eyes were black, completely black. They didn't walk like people. More like they glided. I stayed frozen, barely breathing. They didn't make any sound. Just moved through the town slowly, like they were searching. One of them stopped near the car I was hiding behind. I swear it could hear my heartbeat. It tilted its head slowly, like a curious dog. Then, after what felt like forever, it turned and moved on. I waited until the last one vanished into the shadows. Then I ran. I didn't care where. I just ran behind the buildings, through alleys, jumping over broken fences, until I found a small house with the door hanging open. I rushed inside and slammed the door shut. Inside, the place was dark and cold, but it looked like someone had lived there not long ago. A couch, some books, even a cup of tea that had dried up. I locked the door, pulled a chair to block it, and sat in the corner with my back against the wall. I stayed awake all night, listening. Sometimes I heard whispers outside, sometimes scratching on the walls. Once, I swear I heard a voice whispering my name. When the first light of morning came through the cracked window, everything was normal again. The color returned. The shadows were gone. I stepped outside. The road was back. My car was still where I left it, and it started on the first try. I didn't wait. I drove out of that town as fast as I could. Didn't stop, didn't look back. Later, I tried looking up Gray Hill online. Nothing. No town by that name exists. Not on any map. Not even on satellite images. It's like it was never there. But I was there. I saw it. I felt it. And I still have the note I took from the gas station. Take what you need. Just don't stay past dark. Now, I don't drive without checking the map twice, and I never stop in strange towns without people. If I see an empty place, I keep driving, no matter how tired I am, because I know some towns are not meant to be found. Some places exist only to trap you when the sun goes down. And if you ever see a sign that says, "Welcome to Gray Hill," promise me one thing: don't stop. This is the story of a night I'll never forget. A night that still wakes me up in cold sweats. I'm not someone who believes in ghosts or curses. Not really. But what happened in that deserted town changed me forever. It started with a simple road trip. 4 of us, me, Jake, my girlfriend Emily, and our friends Ryan and Sarah, were heading west across the country. We wanted one last adventure before starting new jobs and adult life. We had a map, music, snacks, and no real schedule. Just a group of friends chasing sunsets and memories. It was day 3 when things started to get weird. Our GPS began acting up, constantly rerouting us even though we were on a straight road. Then the radio started picking up static, even though we were near no mountains. Eventually, we took a turn off the highway, thinking maybe it was a shortcut, back to the main road. That's when we saw the sign. Welcome to Dorchester. It was an old wooden sign, half rotted, with vines crawling up it. The town beyond looked like something from an old western. Dusty buildings, wooden sidewalks, a church steeple in the distance. We hadn't seen a gas station for miles, and our tank was nearly empty, so we figured we'd stop, stretch our legs, maybe find someone to ask for directions. But as we rolled into the town, everything felt wrong. There were no people. The streets were completely empty. Not a dog, not a bird, not even the sound of wind. The buildings looked like they hadn't been touched in years, yet nothing was broken. It was as if everyone had just stepped away for a moment and never came back. Jake parked the car near what looked like a general store. The door creaked open easily, and inside, there were shelves full of goods. Cans, old soda bottles, even dusty candy. It was eerie. Nothing had been stolen or disturbed. "Hello?" Ryan called out. His voice echoed strangely, as if the walls were listening. No answer. We explored for a while. The diner had hot plates, menus, and even plates still on the tables. The barbershop had scissors and razors on the counter. The school had notebooks open mid-sentence. But not a single person. "Maybe it's one of those old movie sets," Sarah said, half joking. But even she didn't sound convinced. Emily kept rubbing her arms. "I don't like this place," she whispered. "It feels like it's watching us." We all agreed to leave, but then Jake tried starting the car. and nothing. The engine clicked but wouldn't turn over. He popped the hood, checked everything, but it all looked fine. The car just refused to start. Then we noticed the sun was setting, and that's when things changed. The sky turned a sickly orange, and shadows stretched across the town like claws. We decided to take shelter in the church. It was the only place. That didn't feel completely wrong. As we walked in, the heavy doors slammed behind us with a force that shook the floor. Inside, it was dark and cold. Candles lined the altar, and to our surprise, they were still burning. Ryan whispered, "Who lit those?" None of us had an answer. We huddled near the front pews, trying to calm ourselves. Emily was crying softly, and I wrapped an arm around her. Jake kept pacing. Sarah sat with her eyes shut, whispering prayers. Then the church bells rang, but not 12 chimes like midnight. 13. And with the last bell, we heard it. Footsteps. Dozens of them. All around us, outside the church. Slow. Dragging. Some heavy, some light. And then a voice. No. Not one voice, but many, whispering in unison. "Welcome home." Jake ran to the window and froze. "Guys," he said, trembling. "You need to see this." We looked. The townspeople were back, but they weren't alive. They stood in the street, watching the church. Pale skin stretched over bone, eyes hollow and black, clothes tattered and old. One of them, an old woman in a long dress, raised her hand and pointed at us. "They've returned," she whispered. "They must stay." Ryan lost it. He ran to the doors, tried to open them. They wouldn't budge. He kicked and punched, screaming, but nothing worked. Then the windows started to crack. Not break. Crack. Like something invisible was pressing against them from the outside, and the voices grew louder. "Stay with us. Stay with us forever." I don't know what came over me, but I ran to the altar and grabbed one of the burning candles. I held it up and shouted, "We're not yours!" The flames grew bigger, higher, like they were responding. The candle burst in a flash of light, knocking me back. But in that moment, everything stopped. The whispers, the cracking, the pressure. Silence returned. Then the church doors creaked open on their own. We didn't wait. We ran. Out of the church, down the street, past the staring ghosts. None of them moved. They just watched, as if disappointed. We got to the car. Jake tried the key. This time, the engine roared to life. No one spoke as we drove away. We didn't stop until we hit a major highway, and when we looked back, the sign that had welcomed us to Dorchester, it was gone. We searched later, online, on maps, even asked some locals in a nearby town. No one had ever heard of a place called Dorchester, in that part of the state, but we were there, all four of us. Sometimes, I think that town was waiting for someone to stay, that if we hadn't made it out before dark, we would have become just like them, frozen in time, trapped in that place where no one lives, but no one truly dies either. Haven't spoken to Jake or the others in a long time. After that night, we drifted apart. Maybe because we didn't want to remember. Maybe because we still hear the whispers when it's too quiet. So if you're ever on a road trip, and your GPS leads you somewhere strange, if you see a town that looks empty but too perfect, turn around, and whatever you do, don't stay after sunset. Let me tell you a story. One that sounds like it came straight out of a nightmare, but it's all true. It's the kind of story that makes you question everything you thought you knew about deserted places and the things that hide in silence. This is the story of a deserted town called Milfield, and how my friend Mark, his sister Lucy, and I stumbled into it on what was supposed to be a fun weekend trip. It all started when Mark, who loves old ghost stories and abandoned places, convinced us to check out an old mining town he read about online. The town was called Milfield, somewhere deep in the mountains, long forgotten by the world. Mark said it was perfect for exploring and maybe even shooting some videos for his YouTube channel. We left early on a Saturday morning. I was the driver, my car was sturdy, and I knew the area well enough. Mark was excited, Lucy was curious, but a little nervous, and I was mostly there to keep things real. After a few hours, the paved road gave way to a gravel path that twisted through thick trees. The air got cooler, the sun dimmer, and the GPS started glitching. The signal kept cutting out, so we had to rely on the old paper map Mark printed from the internet. When we finally saw the sign, Milfield, it looked like we had entered another world. The wooden sign was cracked and faded, hanging crooked on rusty nails. We drove in slowly, expecting a few rundown buildings and some scattered cabins. But what we found was something else. Milfield wasn't just empty, it was dead. The streets were covered in dust and leaves, the buildings sagging and broken. There wasn't a sound, not a bird, not a breeze, nothing. We stepped out of the car, and the silence felt thick, almost heavy. "Looks like a ghost town," Lucy whispered, shivering. "Perfect for the video," Mark said, pulling out his camera. We started walking down the main street, passing an old general store, a church, a school, and a small hotel. Every place looked frozen in time. Cups were still on tables. Newspapers lay scattered, and doors stood open like the people inside had just vanished. I felt uneasy, but tried to shake it off. As we explored the old hotel, Lucy found a diary on the floor near the reception desk. It was covered in dust but surprisingly intact. She opened it and began to read aloud. April 12th, 1949. Things have changed. People are disappearing. No one knows why. The town feels wrong. We can hear whispers in the night. Mark and I exchanged glances. It sounded like the beginning of a horror movie. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through the hotel, slamming the front door shut. The lights flickered, even though we hadn't seen any electricity. We tried the door. It was stuck. "Let's get out of here," I said, my voice tighter than I wanted. But before we could move, the floor creaked upstairs. Footsteps. Slow, dragging footsteps. Not ours. Something else was moving above us. Mark turned on his flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. "Probably an animal," he said. But the footsteps kept coming, then stopped. The silence returned. We tried the door again. This time it opened. We ran outside, gasping for air. As the sun began to set, we decided to leave Milfield, but the car wouldn't start. Mark's face went pale. "It's the battery," he said, but I knew better. Something was wrong. Then we heard it. The faint sound of a woman singing. Soft, eerie, coming from the church at the end of the street. "Did you hear that?" Lucy asked, clutching my arm. We followed the song, cautious but drawn like moths to a flame. The church doors were wide open, swinging slowly in the wind. Inside, the singing grew louder. We stepped in, and the air was thick with the smell of old wood and something sweet, almost like decay. On the altar, a figure stood, a woman in a tattered white dress, her face pale and eyes closed as she sang the haunting melody. We called out, but she didn't respond. Suddenly her eyes snapped open. They were black, deep, endless pits. The church doors slammed shut behind us. We were trapped. The woman's song turned into a growl, and the shadows in the corners of the church twisted and stretched, creeping closer. Panic surged through me. I grabbed a wooden pew and threw it at her. It passed through her like smoke. She smiled, cold and cruel. Mark whispered, "We have to find another way out." We searched, frantically, finally spotting a small door near the back. As we pushed it open, the shadows lunged after us, but we slipped through and slammed it shut. Outside, the town was changing. The buildings seemed to warp, twisting and leaning as if alive. The sky darkened to an unnatural black, stars blinking. Out one by one, we ran to the car again, and this time, the engine started with a roar. We didn't look back as we sped away, the town disappearing in the rearview mirror like a bad dream. Later, back home, we found out that Milfield had been wiped off maps decades ago after a mining accident where the entire population vanished. Mysteriously. No one ever explained what happened. We never went back. And we never spoke about the woman's song, the shadows, or the diary. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear that haunting melody in my dreams. So if you ever come across a town that feels too quiet, too perfect, with empty streets and open doors, turn around. Don't listen for songs in the wind. Just drive away and don't look back, because some places are better left forgotten. It's a story about what happened to me and my two friends, Alex and Claire. This is the story of the deserted town horror story that still haunts me to this day. It all began with a simple idea. Alex was always into urban exploring and abandoned places. One Friday evening, he found an old forum post about a forgotten town called Harrowsville. The post was vague, but said the town had been abandoned for decades after something terrible happened. The place had an eerie reputation. Locals called it cursed, but Alex wanted to see it for himself. Claire and I were hesitant. We'd heard stories about places like this, and none of them ended well. But Alex was persuasive, and by Saturday morning, we were driving toward where the town was supposed to be. The road was rough and winding. Our GPS cut out as soon as we left the highway. Alex was following an old paper map, his excitement growing. The sun was shining, and the drive felt normal, until we reached the edge of a thick forest and found a rusty sign that read, "Welcome to Harrowsville." The sign was old, half broken, but we had made it. As we entered the town, the first thing we noticed was how silent it was. No birds, no wind rustling through trees, no sounds of life anywhere. The houses were weathered, paint peeling, windows shattered. The streets were empty, cracked, with weeds growing through the pavement. It looked like the kind of place you'd expect in a horror movie. We parked near what looked like an old gas station. Claire shivered and said, "This feels wrong, like the town is holding its breath," but Alex was already filming. "This is gold. Wait till we upload this video." We started exploring. The town felt frozen in time. Inside the gas station, old newspapers lay scattered, dated back to 1965. The shelves were still stocked with cans and bottles, dusty but untouched. It was creepy. Suddenly, Claire noticed something strange. "Guys, look at this," she said, pointing to a newspaper. Headline taped to the wall, "Disappearance of the town's entire population. Authorities baffled." We read on, learning that one night, everyone in Harrowsville vanished without a trace. The police searched for weeks, but found nothing. Then the town was abandoned and erased from maps. A chill ran down my spine. As we wandered the streets, the shadows seemed longer, darker. The sun dipped lower and the air grew cold, even though it was summer. We agreed to head to the hotel to rest and regroup. The hotel was an old brick building with creaky floors and a musty smell. The lobby was empty except for an old guest book on the counter. Alex flipped through it. The last entry was from 1965. That's when the lights flickered and went out. We pulled out our phones and flashlights, but the batteries were dying fast. The atmosphere became heavier, like the air itself was pressing down on us. Suddenly, a faint tapping sound echoed from upstairs, like someone was knocking on a door. We froze. "Who's there?" Alex called out, trying to sound brave. No answer. The tapping grew louder, moving down the hallway toward us. Claire grabbed my arm. We should leave. Now. We hurried outside, but the hotel door slammed shut behind us. Outside, the town looked even stranger. The shadows shifted and the street lamps flickered on by themselves, casting an unnatural glow. That's when we saw them. Figures. Shadowy, blurry shapes standing at the end of the street. They didn't walk, but glided toward us slowly. Their faces were obscured, but their presence was chilling. Alex tried to film, but the camera flickered and died. "Run," I shouted. We sprinted to the car, but the engine wouldn't start. The figures were closer now, their forms clearer. Pale faces, hollow eyes, mouths moving but no sound coming out. Claire screamed as one reached toward her. Just then, the headlights flickered on and the engine roared to life. We didn't hesitate. I slammed the gear into drive and floored the accelerator. As we sped away, the figures disappeared into the mist behind us. We didn't stop until we reached the highway, and even then, the silence in the car was deafening. Later, we tried to explain what happened, but no one believed us. Some said we must have hallucinated, or it was a prank. But I know what we saw. Harrowsville is out there, waiting. And if you ever find a town with no people, no sounds, and a silence that screams, don't stop, because some places aren't just deserted, they're forgotten for a reason. This is the story of a deserted town, one that almost swallowed me whole. It's something I never planned to experience, but sometimes curiosity and a dare pull you into places you shouldn't go. I'm going to tell you what happened when my friends Ethan, Sarah, and I decided to explore the ghost town of Ravenswood. It started as a joke. Ethan, always the thrill seeker, had read about Ravenswood online. The town had been abandoned for nearly 50 years after a strange event nobody could explain. Rumors said people vanished overnight, leaving behind everything: homes, cars, even meals on tables. The internet was full of wild theories, cult rituals, government experiments, paranormal activity. Sarah and I weren't sure if any of it was true, but Ethan insisted we check it out. One crisp autumn morning, we set off in Ethan's truck, excited and nervous. The road leading to Ravenswood was narrow and winding, cutting through dense forest. The closer we got, the heavier the air felt, as if the trees themselves were warning us to turn back. When we finally reached the entrance, there was an old wooden sign, half rotten, hanging from broken chains. It read, "Welcome to Ravenswood. Population 0. Ethan laughed. "Perfect. Let's see if we find any ghosts." We parked near the center of town. The silence was immediate and absolute. No birds chirping, no wind rustling leaves, just the crunch of our footsteps on cracked pavement. The buildings were weather-beaten and covered with ivy, windows smashed or boarded up. The scent of decay mixed with damp earth filled the air. Sarah shivered. "This place is creepy, even during the day." We agreed to split up and explore carefully, planning to meet back at the old town square in an hour. Ethan took the left street, Sarah the right, and I headed straight ahead toward what looked like the town hall. Inside, dust hung thick like smoke. Papers were scattered on the floor, yellowed with age. An old calendar hung on the wall, stopped on October 15th, 1973. I found a stack of newspapers with headlines screaming about mysterious disappearances. People had just vanished. Then I heard it. A faint whisper, soft but urgent, coming from the basement stairs. My heart hammered, but curiosity pushed me forward. I descended the creaking steps, phone flashlight barely lighting the way. The whisper grew clearer, words I couldn't quite understand but felt like a warning. Suddenly, my phone flickered and went dark. I was plunged into darkness. I reached out blindly, then felt something brush past me, a cold, wet touch like a hand or a slick shadow. I scrambled up the stairs, breathless, and slammed the basement door shut behind me. I decided to find Ethan and Sarah. As I stepped back outside, the sky darkened unnaturally. Thick clouds swallowed the sun. The temperature dropped fast, frost forming on the ground despite the season. I found Ethan near the old church, his face pale. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. "Hear what?" He pointed at the cracked bell tower. From it came a slow, rhythmic knocking, like a heartbeat. Sarah appeared suddenly, eyes wide, whispering, "I saw someone, or something, watching me from the schoolhouse. We decided to leave. Together this time." But as we walked, the town seemed to shift. The streets twisted in ways that didn't make sense. Buildings moved or vanished behind us. It was like Ravenswood was alive, trapping us inside its haunted heart. Then came the shadows. Long, twisting shapes that flickered at the edge of our vision. When we turned, they disappeared. The whispering voices grew louder, chanting in a language we couldn't understand. Panic set in. We ran toward Ethan's truck, but the engine refused to start. The air was thick, heavy with dread. From the darkness, figures emerged. They were translucent, human shapes twisted with agony. Their eyes were hollow sockets, mouths frozen in silent screams. They floated toward us, reaching out with ghostly hands. Sarah screamed as one passed through her jacket, chilling her to the bone. Ethan grabbed a rusty metal pipe from the ground, swinging wildly. But the figures didn't stop. They moved through everything, unstoppable. Desperate, I remembered the town hall basement. Maybe whatever was down there was the source of this nightmare. We stumbled back inside, hearts pounding. The basement door creaked open by itself. Inside, the whispering voices formed words now. Words begging for release, for help, for freedom. In the corner was a small wooden box, ancient and covered in strange symbols. Ethan opened it, revealing a dusty, broken amulet. As he held it up, a violent wind howled through the basement. The ghostly figures screamed and began to dissolve into light. The whispers turned into cries of thanks, then silence. The sky cleared. The town's shifting stopped. The weight lifted. We escaped Ravenswood as fast as we could, never looking back. Days later, when we told our story, no one believed us. Some thought we were crazy. Others said it was just an overactive imagination. But I know what we saw. Ravenswood wasn't just a deserted town. It was a prison for restless souls, caught between worlds. So if you ever find yourself near a town with no people, where silence feels alive and shadows watch you closely, remember Ravenswood. Some places are empty, for a reason, and some ghosts don't want to be found.